Hey there folks, welcome back to Jits and Cardboard, and today we are covering a game that you will definitely not want to miss out on if you are fans of Pokemon and Everdell. I feel like it flew a bit under the radar. I'm flying solo today because Jeff has quit, and with that, the game we are covering is Wondrous Creatures. Welcome to Wondrous Creatures. Wondrous Creatures is Bad Comet's latest release following Life of the Amazonia, and it sees you as seafaring adventurers who've stumbled across this island full of wondrous, curious, and ultimately adorable creatures. Each creature has different types, there's different biomes available on the island. Obviously, we're ringing some bells here. There's similarities between this game and Pokemon and Everdell that we'll get into later. But for now, just know thematically you're playing an explorer that lands on this island that is attempting to find and play wondrous creatures. So each turn you have one of four possible actions you can take. The first is placing a worker. When you place a worker, you have to pick two adjacent empty hexes. An empty hex is either plains or mountains, and place your worker in that hex. Once you place the worker, you will activate all adjacent biome icons next to the worker you just placed. So in this case, I would activate 2 fruit biomes and 1 reef biome. When I do that, I have one of 2 options for each icon. The first is I can gain the resource matching that icon. So in this case, I could gain 2 fruit and 1 reef. Or I could say, you know what, I don't want to gain one of those fruits. Instead, I'd like to gain this Griffling from the market because it's super adorable. And when I play it, I immediately score one of my endgame cards up to a maximum of 10 victory points. So before we get into playing a card, which is the second possible action, I do want to give you a tour of the anatomy of a card. Firstly, in the top left is the creature type, in this case, a reptile. On the top right is the biome that creature wants to live in or lives in. On the left here along the side is the cost to play that creature, and then below that is the type of card it is in terms of how it activates when it gets played. In this case, we have this Plant Aurora. It costs 2 reef and 1 flower. And when it plays, it adds 2 charges to the card, and you can spend a charge to add another creature type to this card, meaning it morphs into whatever creature types you want. Super cool. The third action you can take on your turn is to complete an achievement. Achievements are the central objectives that were put out during setup of the game that require you to have certain combinations or certain types of creatures in your tableau throughout the game. These are first come, first serve, and a race, so you'll want to focus on these, and these will help steer you as you play the game. Once you've completed one, in order to claim the achievement, you just pick an achievement marker on your board. You gain the bonus listed next to it, in this case, 2 of any resource, and then you place your marker on the achievement, locking in those endgame victory points. Once that's done, you take a trophy on the map, reserving that for yourself, and pass to the next player. And here comes our first minor complaint about the game. All the achievements feel very samey. They're all something to do with have 6 of this type of creature, or have 5 of these 2 types of creatures in any combination, or have 6 creatures that live in the same habitat in your tableau. It's all very straightforward, and I understand that makes the game more approachable, but especially in expansion content, I would have loved to see some more variety. Now, this game has 2 really cool resources that are super unique for this game, but the first I really want to highlight is eggs. Eggs can exist either hatched on the black side or unhatched on the color side, and match the creature types that are in the game. Eggs get slotted into your player board and count as various creatures that you have in your tableau. Once hatched, however, they don't count anymore, and you can only ever have 12 of them in your tableau at maximum at any given point in time. What this does is forces you to juggle keeping them as active icons for various triggers and objectives, or flipping them to gain various bonuses as resources you spend to activate other cards. For example, I have this egg, which is a fish type egg. That would contribute to the objective on the board, the central objective, which is a fish type objective, have 6 of them. If I had 5 fish and this, that would count towards 6. But I also have this card that states, when I play it, I can hatch an egg to gain 2 of any resource. Once I hatch that egg, I lose that bonus. Now, if I'd already claimed the objective and I lose the bonus, I don't lose the objective, but it's a really cool decision to have to make while you're playing the game. Additionally, you can get different engines going, such as this one, which says when you pass, gain any 1 resource and flip 2 eggs to flip them back. but this combination gives you so many thinky interactions beyond just the cards. The second resource I think they've implemented in a really cool way are these nets right here. Nets are primarily earned through taking recharge actions and passing turns, and can be spent to activate icons on various biomes you're activating during worker placement. Think of these as the items you find on the Pokemon route on the way to your next gym. It's not the actual route and the grass, but it is an item that's just sitting out there waiting to be found. What effectively happens is when you place your worker, you activate all the icons around that worker. If you spend a net, you can activate the smaller icons within each icon that's available to you. The coolest part about this is if you have multiple nets, you can activate multiple icons, and every single map building location has an icon on it, and they typically do something different. So you can plan to have certain areas of the board activate in a way that helps your engine on the back end every time you take a recharge action. Now, I love asymmetry, and this game does asymmetry super well. Basically, at the start of a game, you are going to draft an asymmetric player power in the form of a captain. That captain will attach magnetically to one of your workers, and whenever you place that worker, there's an ability you can unlock that will activate. In my case, my ability was whenever I place my captain, I add an energy to my captain. I can then on my turn spend that energy to take a top card of the discard pile, or take that card and gain the resource matching that card's biome, which is super cool. Now, it's only on one of your 3 workers, which doesn't overly impact the game, but it just gives it a little more depth, as we outlined earlier with these other mechanisms that just make it so much more than what's on the surface. The last action you can take on your turn is a recharge action. To do so, you must have all 3 of your workers out on the board. Firstly, return all 3 of your workers back to your supply. Then advance the time tracker. Then, if you ran into one of these egg tokens, place an egg on every single spot on the board that has a matching icon. And that is how you play Wondrous Creatures. We'll be back to you in a second. Bad Comet has created an absolute masterpiece here for the weight they're trying to punch at, and I just want to emphasize how great and refreshing this is as someone who's played a lot of these kind of games. This still finds a way to be super cool and interesting, even though it compares to a lot of games like Everdell. Now, I think some of the stuff they've improved on from the generic worker placement tableau building games is the worker placement here feels a little more free. Like, you kind of can make any decision you want, but those decisions will have lasting consequences because you're kind of choosing between resources and cards, and then which cards and how they interact. Also, my biggest issue with Everdell is that the game is limited as far as how many cards you can play, so you end up drilling through the deck trying to find the right cards to make the right combinations. And I would say once you're versed in that game, your tableau ends up looking very similar game to game to game. In this game, first off, critters and buildings that don't exist in this game don't match up, so you don't have that issue of digging for combinations. But also, the way the cards interact with each other is a lot more loose and open, encouraging you to try more stuff out and fiddle around and turn this into your sandbox. You know what I mean? Like, do what you can. Now, some criticisms of this game, and they're not massive, is I wish the objectives felt a little less samey than they do. I think I mentioned it earlier, but generally speaking, they're very similar, whether it be like have this many of this type of critter or have this many critters that live in this habitat. It's just very samey for the fact you have 7 of them up at any given point in time. Also, I feel like the market could get a bit stale, so I wish there was a way for you to forcibly sweep the market and replace cards. And I think that add a lot of depth, because it's not just caring about what you're doing anymore, it's also paying attention to your opponents and maybe playing around them in that way. I know some people don't love take-that-y stuff, so I understand why they didn't do it, but a little more player interaction would be really welcome. Other than that, though, I think they've done just an absolute fantastic job. I think this absolutely deserves a place on your shelf. I think that the creatures and the production are adorable. I think that all the art is outstanding, and thank you, Bad Comet, for putting out such an amazing game, because I'm about it. This one for me gets a strong 8.5 out of 10. I think the expansions slot in really well as well, so if you can find those and get your hands on them, they're really cool. I won't cover them here, but just check it out, and thanks for watching. Catch you next time. See ya.